When I was 12, the forest behind our village began to breathe. That's the only way I can describe it now. At night, when the wind died and even the dogs refused to bark, something in the trees felt alive. Not alive like birds or foxes. Alive like it was aware. We lived at the edge of a small settlement surrounded by endless woods. People said the forest stretched all the way to the border of nowhere. My father used to joke that if you walked straight long enough, you'd end up in another country or another world. I never tested that theory. The first time I saw him, it was late autumn. The leaves had fallen, and the trees stood naked and skeletal against a grey sky. I was sitting on the back steps of our house when I noticed a shape between the trunks. A boy. He stood too still. At first, I thought it was someone from the village playing a prank. But no one I knew had hair that dark. It wasn't just black, it swallowed light. His clothes looked wrong too, like they were stitched from shadows. He didn't wave, didn't call out. He just watched. "Hey!" I shouted, trying to sound brave. The boy tilted his head slightly. The movement was sharp, almost mechanical. Then he stepped forward. The moment his foot crossed the line where the forest met our yard, I felt something shift. The air grew heavier. The birds that had been chirping fell silent all at once. He smiled. It wasn't a normal smile. His lips stretched too wide, as if they weren't used to the motion. For a second, I thought I saw something move behind his teeth. Something small and thin, like writhing roots. "Can I come closer?" he asked. His voice sounded distant, like it traveled through a long tunnel before reaching me. I didn't answer. My legs wouldn't move. He took another step anyway. That's when I noticed his feet. They weren't touching the ground properly. The grass beneath him didn't bend. It was as if he hovered just a fraction above the earth. "My name is Daniel," he said. I don't know why that frightened me more than anything else. Because Daniel was my name. Behind him, the forest began to shift. The trees leaned inward slightly, as if listening. Between their trunks, shadows moved independently from the branches above. "Your mother is looking for you," he continued softly. "She doesn't know I'm here." I hadn't told him about my mother. I hadn't told him anything. A low sound rolled through the woods, deep and vibrating. Not quite a growl. Not quite the wind. The boy glanced back, and for a split second, his face changed. The skin stretched thin. His eyes widened vertically, like a snake's. Something pushed against his cheeks from the inside, as if another face was trying to crawl out. Then it was normal again. "Don't be scared," he whispered. Too late. The porch light flickered. The door behind me creaked open, and my mother called my name from inside the house. When I turned back toward the yard, he was gone. Only the trees remained, but at the very edge of the forest. I didn't tell my mother about the boy. Not that night. At dinner, she kept talking about ordinary things, the price of bread, the neighbor's broken fence, the early frost expected by morning. Her voice sounded distant to me, as if I were underwater, because I couldn't stop thinking about the carving. "We found you." After she went to bed, I grabbed a flashlight and returned to the back door. I don't know what I expected. Maybe that the message would be gone. Maybe that I imagined it. The forest stood silent under the moonlight. The carved words were still there. The bark around them looked wet and dark, like the tree had bled. I crouched down to examine the handprint. It was larger than mine, but thin, unnaturally thin. And there were 6 fingers. 6. As I stared at it, the flashlight flickered. A soft crunch echoed behind me. Leaves. Slow footsteps. I turned around too quickly and almost fell backward. He stood at the edge of the yard again. "Daniel." But this time he was closer. "I didn't mean to scare you," he said gently. His eyes reflected the flashlight beam, but not like normal eyes. They glowed faintly green, like something deep underwater catching stray light. "You wrote that," I whispered. He looked toward the carving and tilted his head again. "No," he replied. "They did." "Who?" For a moment, he didn't answer. Instead, he stepped forward, and again the grass did not bend beneath him. "The ones who live where the roots touch," he said quietly. "The ones who heard your name." A cold shiver crawled up my spine. "I never said my name," I said. "You didn't have to." Something moved behind him. At first, I thought it was wind. But the air was completely still. Between two trees, a shape stretched upward. Tall. Far too tall. It unfolded slowly, like a spider rising from a crouch. It had no clear outline. Just darkness thicker than the night around it. My breath caught. Daniel glanced back at the shape. "They're curious," he murmured. "They haven't seen one like you before." "One like me." My voice cracked. He smiled again, but this time it looked more practiced. Less stretched. "You're still whole." The tall shape shifted. I heard something like bones cracking, but too many of them. The sound rippled through the trees in unnatural rhythm. "They want to know what it feels like," Daniel continued softly. "To feel what?" "To be inside." The flashlight died. Total darkness swallowed us. I could hear my heartbeat pounding in my ears. Then I felt something brush against my ankle. Not a hand. Not a branch. Something thin and jointed. I kicked wildly and stumbled backward toward the house. The porch light suddenly snapped on by itself, flooding the yard with yellow glow. The forest retreated. The tall shape dissolved into the trees. And Daniel. He remained. But his smile faded. "They don't like the light," he said quietly. "It makes it harder to enter." "Enter what?" I demanded. He looked at me carefully, almost sympathetically. "You." I didn't sleep that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the tendrils. They hadn't been shadows. I was sure of that now. They had stretched from Daniel's back like thin, living wires, disappearing into the forest behind him. And when he stepped away, they tightened, as if something else was wearing him. By morning, I had almost convinced myself it was a nightmare, the kind born from too many horror stories and too much imagination. But when I looked out the kitchen window, I saw something that erased all doubt. Footprints. They began at the tree line and stopped halfway across our yard. But they weren't normal footprints. They were long and narrow, with 6 distinct toe marks pressed into the frost-covered grass. The ice hadn't melted beneath them. It had blackened. I stared until my mother called my name. "You're going to be late," she said. I nodded and grabbed my backpack, trying to act normal, trying to ignore the forest watching me through the window. School felt unreal that day. The classroom lights flickered once during math, and I nearly jumped out of my chair. My best friend Mark asked if I was sick. I told him I didn't sleep well. That wasn't a lie. When I returned home that afternoon, the footprints were gone. The yard looked untouched. Too untouched. I walked slowly toward the tree with the carving. The words were still there, but something had changed. Under "We found you," new letters had been scratched into the bark. "We are close." The handprint was deeper now. The bark around it split open slightly, as if something beneath was pushing outward. "Daniel," I whispered. The name felt wrong in my mouth. The forest answered. Branches creaked, though there was no wind. Birds burst from the treetops all at once, scattering into the pale sky. And then I saw him. Not at the edge of the yard. Closer. Standing behind the carved tree. He stepped out slowly, his movements smoother than before. "You came back," I said, my voice trembling. "I told you I would," he replied. He looked more solid now. Less like smoke pretending to be a boy. His skin even had color, faint, but there. "They're learning," he said quietly. "Learning what?" "How to hold shape longer." Something inside my stomach twisted. As he spoke, I noticed small cracks along his neck. Thin lines, like fractures in porcelain. From one of them, something dark pulsed faintly. "You're not real," I said. He smiled, but this time it faltered. "I am as real as you need me to be." Behind him, the forest shifted again. I saw movement between multiple trees now. More than one tall shape. More than one pair of vertical eyes opening in the shadows. "They want to try tonight," Daniel said. "Try what?" I demanded. He stepped closer, and this time the grass beneath him shriveled slightly, turning gray. To step out fully. The cracks on his neck widened. For a split second, his face split too, not torn, but opening, as if his head were a door barely holding something back. I ran. I didn't wait to see what his hand would do. I didn't wait for the cracks in his face to widen. I turned and sprinted toward the house. Behind me, I heard something hit the ground, not footsteps, but multiple impacts, fast and uneven, like several limbs learning how to move at once. "Daniel." My mother's voice called from inside. For a moment, my blood turned cold. How did she know? I burst through the door and slammed it shut behind me, locking it with shaking hands. My mother stood in the hallway, frowning. "Why are you running?" she asked. "You just called me," I said. She looked confused. "No, I didn't." The air inside the house felt heavier than usual. Too still. A faint scratching sound came from the back wall. Not outside. Inside the walls. I froze. My mother didn't seem to hear it. "Did someone come by?" she asked casually. "I thought I saw someone in the yard earlier." My stomach dropped. "What did they look like?" I asked carefully. She hesitated. "I'm not sure. A boy, maybe. Standing near the trees. I thought it was one of your friends." My heart pounded harder. "He's not my friend," I whispered. The scratching grew louder. It moved along the wall, slow, deliberate, as if something were dragging thin fingers across the wood from the inside. My mother's expression changed slightly. "Did you hear that?" So she heard it now. The sound stopped abruptly. Then came a soft knock. 3 slow taps. From the back door. We both turned toward it. Another knock. 3 taps again. "Are you expecting someone?" she asked. I shook my head. The knocks continued. Steady. Patient. Then a voice drifted through the door. Soft. Familiar. "Daniel," it called gently. "It's cold." My mother blinked. "That's strange," she murmured. "He sounds polite." I stepped backward. "That's not him," I whispered urgently. But she was already walking toward the door. "Mom, don't." I grabbed her arm. The knocking stopped. Silence. Then the voice came again, but closer to the wall this time. "I can come in another way." The scratching returned. Only now it was faster, running along the inside of the walls. Upward. Across the ceiling. Dust drifted down lightly from above us. My mother's face had gone pale. "That's not possible," she whispered. A long crack split across the living room ceiling with a sharp snapping sound. From it, something thin and black pushed through. Not a hand. Not fully. Just the tip of something jointed and twitching. It withdrew quickly, as if testing the air. "They are practicing." Daniel's layered voice echoed from somewhere inside the house. The front window shattered. Glass sprayed across the floor as a tall shape forced itself halfway through the frame. It didn't bend correctly. Its limbs folded at impossible angles. Its head brushed the ceiling. And where its face should have been, there were only vertical slits opening and closing. My mother screamed. The creature twitched violently, adjusting, compressing itself unnaturally to fit the room. The tall creature moved first. It didn't walk. It folded. Its limbs bent inward and snapped outward again, pulling its body forward in short, jerking motions. The sound it made wasn't a growl or a hiss. It was closer to breathing through broken reeds, wet, uneven, hungry. My mother grabbed my arm and pulled me toward the kitchen. "Upstairs," she whispered urgently. But the ceiling above us cracked again. A second limb forced its way through the plaster, splintering wood and raining dust over the hallway. The house groaned as if it were alive and in pain. "They don't understand doors yet," Daniel said calmly from the living room. I could hear him stepping over broken glass. "They're still learning boundaries." We reached the staircase. The creature by the window suddenly twisted its head. No, not twisted. It rotated completely around without moving its body. The vertical slits widened toward us. It saw us. Its limbs lengthened. Bones extended with sharp, snapping sounds, stretching like pulled wires. It began climbing the walls instead of using the floor. "They prefer tight spaces," Daniel continued, his voice oddly patient. "It helps them press closer." Something slammed against the staircase railing below. The wood splintered. We ran upstairs. I pulled my mother into my bedroom and locked the door, though I knew it wouldn't matter. The scratching inside the walls had already reached the second floor. Daniel. The layered voice echoed again, this time from the ceiling above my bed. You don't have to be afraid. The ceiling cracked in a long, jagged line. From the split, thin black tendrils lowered slowly into the room. Not reaching for us. Just swaying. Testing the air. My mother backed into the corner, shaking. What do they want? She whispered. Before I could answer, the bedroom door handle began to turn. Slowly. Deliberately. But we had locked it. The handle kept turning anyway. The wood around it began to darken and soften, as if rotting from the inside. The lock clicked open by itself. Daniel stepped inside. He looked almost sad. I tried to tell you gently, he said. Behind him, the hallway ceiling split fully open. The tall creature dropped down onto the floor, its limbs absorbing the impact unnaturally. It didn't attack. It simply stood there, breathing in. The vertical slits along its face pulsed. They're fascinated, Daniel said quietly. Your shape. Your warmth. The way you stay contained. The tendrils above us lowered further. One brushed my shoulder. Cold. Not freezing. Empty. Like touching something that wasn't fully there. My skin tingled where it made contact. The tall creature stepped closer to my mother. It leaned down. Its slits widened as if inhaling her scent. She feels brighter, Daniel murmured. No. I shouted, stepping in front of her. Daniel's expression flickered. For a split second, the cracks across his face widened again. And behind them, I saw movement, multiple shapes pressing against the inside of his skin. The moment the tendrils tightened around my wrist, something inside me shifted. Not pain. Not exactly. It felt like a door unlocking somewhere deep behind my ribs. I gasped and dropped to my knees. The tall creature reacted instantly. Its slits narrowed, focusing. Its head leaned closer, inches from my face. I could hear something moving inside it, like liquid sliding through hollow branches. Daniel stepped forward quickly. Careful, he said, and this time his voice sounded strained. Too fast and you'll tear it. The tendrils loosened slightly. Air rushed back into my lungs. What are you doing to him? My mother screamed. The creature's head rotated toward her again. Daniel raised his hand, not 6 fingers now, but shifting between 5 and 6 as if undecided. They're not hurting him, he said softly. They're sinking. Sinking with what? I forced out. With the part of you that already answered. The room seemed to tilt. I remembered the first night. When I hadn't run. When I had stared. Something in the forest had noticed because something in me had responded. The cracks across Daniel's face widened again. This time they didn't close immediately. Through the gaps. I saw thin black threads weaving under his skin like roots searching for soil. They can't fully cross without an anchor, he continued. A mind that looks back. A mind that doesn't turn away. My mother grabbed a lamp from the nightstand and hurled it at the tall creature. The lamp passed through part of its body. Not completely, but partially. Where it struck, the creature flickered. Its form destabilizing like smoke caught in wind. The slits snapped shut. A sharp, distorted shriek filled the room, not loud, but layered, like many voices compressed into one. They're not stable yet, Daniel muttered. The tendrils withdrew suddenly from my wrist. The pulse in my chest slowed. For a moment, the creatures hesitated. Light from the broken hallway window spilled into the room, touching the tall shape's elongated limbs. Wherever the light hit, its surface thinned, becoming translucent. They need darkness, I realized aloud. Daniel's eyes shifted toward me. Darkness helps, he admitted. But it isn't required forever. The tall creature stepped backward into the hallway shadows. Behind Daniel, more cracks opened in the walls. Thin shapes pressed against the plaster from the inside, outlining themselves faintly before sinking back. They're close, Daniel whispered. His expression changed again, this time almost human. You could make it easier. Easier how? I demanded. Invite us. The words echoed strangely. The forest's deep vibration rolled through the house again, stronger than before. The windows rattled. The floorboards trembled. They need permission, he explained quietly. Not spoken. Felt. The tall creature slowly extended its limb again, but cautiously now. Not grabbing. Waiting. I felt that strange pulse inside my chest again. Faint. Responding. The pulse inside my chest no longer felt accidental. It was rhythmic now, answering the vibration from the forest. Every time that deep sound rolled through the night, something beneath my ribs responded like an echo. Daniel stepped closer, and for the first time, I saw fear flicker across his face. Not for himself. For control. "You're adapting faster than they expected," he murmured. The tall creature in the hallway froze mid-motion. Its limbs trembled slightly, as if waiting for instruction. I pushed myself to my feet. The tendrils that had withdrawn earlier were still hovering near the ceiling crack, swaying uncertainly. "I didn't invite you," I said, though my voice sounded distant to my own ears. Daniel tilted his head. "You didn't refuse." The forest vibrated again. Stronger. The windows shattered completely this time. Cold night air rushed into the house, carrying the scent of damp, soil and something older, something metallic and ancient. Through the broken walls, I could see them clearly now. Dozens of tall shapes standing between the trees, watching the house, waiting for a signal. The pulse in my chest grew hotter. It wasn't fear anymore. It was recognition. They're not just curious, I realized slowly. Daniel's smile faded. "No," he admitted. "They're searching." "For what?" His cracks widened across his cheeks and forehead. The skin there thinned, revealing movement beneath. "For a doorway that survives the crossing." The tall creature in the hallway stepped back suddenly. Not away from me. Away from the forest. As if whatever had shifted inside me was stronger than what commanded it. The tendrils lowered again, but this time they hesitated before touching my skin. When they brushed my arm, I didn't feel emptiness. I felt something else. Weight. As if I could feel where they came from. Deep underground. Where roots tangled in darkness and something enormous coiled between them. My vision blurred. For a split second, I saw through the forest's perspective. The house looked small. Fragile. Temporary. Daniel was just a vessel. The tall creatures were scouts. But beneath the forest floor, something vast pressed upward, waiting for permission. The pulse in my chest aligned perfectly with it, and the tall creature closest to me bowed. Not aggressively, not submissively, acknowledging. Daniel stepped back, alarm spreading across his features. "That wasn't supposed to happen," he whispered. The cracks across his body widened suddenly. From within, thin black threads began pulling him backward, toward the forest. "They don't control you," he realized. I took a slow breath. The vibration from the woods no longer felt threatening. It felt expectant. The creatures outside shifted uneasily. The massive presence beneath the roots stirred again, but this time, it wasn't trying to push in. It was waiting for direction. Daniel's voice led again, but now it sounded fractured. "You were meant to open," he said. "Not command." The house was barely standing. Wind moved freely through shattered windows. The walls groaned. Plaster crumbled in soft pieces onto the floor. But none of the creatures moved. They were waiting. For me. The pulse in my chest had become steady now. No longer wild, no longer frightening. It felt ancient. Familiar. As if it had always been there. Only buried too deep to notice. Daniel's body flickered at the edges. Thin cracks spreading across his arms and neck like fractures in ice. "You weren't supposed to connect this way," he said quietly. "You were supposed to be hollow enough." "Hollow?" I repeated. "So we could root." Behind him, the forest seemed to bend inward. The trees leaned slightly toward the house, their branches twitching like nervous fingers. The massive presence beneath the roots stirred again. And this time I understood something clearly. It wasn't trying to invade. It was incomplete. The creatures weren't monsters in the way I had thought. They were extensions. Fragments. Searching for structure. The tall being in the hallway slowly straightened. Its elongated limbs folding neatly against its body. Its vertical slits narrowed, not in hunger, but in recognition. "You're missing something," I said, the words coming without effort. Daniel froze. The threads inside his skin tightened. "We are not missing," he answered, though his layered voice trembled. "You are." I insisted. The pulse inside me grew warmer. Images flashed behind my eyes, roots spreading through dark soil, reaching endlessly but never finding something stable enough to hold. Forms created from shadow and instinct, but unable to sustain shape. They weren't trying to consume. They were trying to anchor. You don't know how to stay, I said softly. The tall creature lowered its head further. Daniel staggered back a step, his cracks widening. Thin black threads began slipping from his fingertips and dissolving in the air. We adapt, he replied weakly. You imitate, I corrected. Silence fell. Even the forest vibration quieted slightly, as if listening closer. My mother stepped slowly toward me, placing a trembling hand on my shoulder. Daniel, please, she whispered. Make them leave. Daniel was fading, not disappearing all at once, but unraveling thread by thread. Pieces of him drifted into the air like black ash, dissolving before they touched the floor. The cracks across his face widened until there was almost more darkness than skin. They're pulling back, he whispered. Outside, the tall figures between the trees began to retreat slowly, not turning their backs, just stepping backward into the forest's depth, folding into shadow. The massive presence beneath the roots loosened its coil. Not gone. Watching. The pulse in my chest had quieted to a steady glow, like an ember instead of a flame. And with every breath I took, the forest mirrored me. Calm. Contained. My mother clutched my arm. Is it over? I didn't answer immediately. Daniel's form flickered violently for a moment, then stabilized just enough for him to look at me clearly. You changed the pattern, he said softly. His voice was no longer layered, just thin, almost human. They were reaching. You made them wait. They were tearing through everything, I replied. They didn't understand what they were breaking. They understand now, he said. A deep rumble rolled beneath the earth, not aggressive, but acknowledging, like something vast shifting into a more comfortable position. The cracks in the walls stopped spreading. The ceiling fragments settled. The tendrils that had pierced through withdrew completely, leaving only damaged plaster behind. Daniel's outline grew fainter. Will you come back? I asked before I could stop myself. He paused. For the first time since I'd seen him, his expression looked genuinely uncertain. I don't know what I am without them pushing, he admitted. Behind him, the forest seemed different. Still dark. Still deep. But no longer pressing forward. You were never just them, I said quietly. You hesitated. Daniel blinked, as if that thought had never occurred to him. The last of the cracks spread across his face like frost on glass. They will try again someday, he said. Not to invade. To understand. The ember inside my chest flickered. And if they forget? I asked. His faint smile returned, smaller now, almost real. Then you will remind them. The ground vibrated gently one last time. The tall shapes had fully vanished between the trees. The windows were empty now, only moonlight spilling across broken glass. Daniel's body fragmented completely. Not explosively. Quietly. He dissolved into a swirl of dark particles that drifted toward the forest, slipping through the shattered frame and disappearing into the trees. Silence followed. True silence. No scratching in the walls. No layered whispers. No vibration beneath the earth. Just the cold night air moving softly through the broken house. My mother slowly lowered herself onto the edge of my bed, shaking. It's gone, she whispered. I walked to the window. The forest stood still. But as I watched, I noticed something subtle. The trees weren't leaning inward anymore. Weeks passed. The house was repaired. The broken windows replaced. The cracked ceiling patched. Neighbors assumed a storm had done the damage. My mother didn't correct them. We didn't talk about that night. Not directly. But sometimes. I would catch her staring at the forest with the same guarded look I wore. The trees had changed. Not visibly. Not in a way anyone else would notice. But I could feel it. The pressure was gone. The air no longer carried that suffocating curiosity. The forest didn't lean toward the house anymore. It simply existed, quiet, deep, patient. The ember inside my chest had faded to something almost unnoticeable. Almost. At night, when everything was still. I could feel it faintly responding to something far beneath the soil. Not calling, not demanding, just connected. I hadn't seen Daniel again, but sometimes I dreamed of him standing at the edge of the yard. Not cracked, not unraveling, just watching the house with an expression I couldn't quite read. Not hunger, not fear, something closer to thought. One evening, as autumn returned and the leaves began to fall again, I stepped outside alone. The air was cold. The forest lines stood dark against the fading sky. For a long time, nothing happened. Then I felt it. A gentle pulse beneath my ribs. Soft. Measured. I didn't panic. I walked slowly toward the edge of the yard, stopping where grass met shadow. The trees did not lean. The air did not thicken. But between two trunks, a shape formed. Not tall and broken like before. Smaller. Stable. Daniel stepped forward. He looked different. Less perfect. Less constructed. His movements were slower, more natural. His feet touched the ground, and this time, the grass bent slightly beneath them. He stopped at the boundary. He didn't cross. We stood there, facing each other in the quiet dusk. "You're still here," I said. "So are you," he replied. His voice was single now. No layering. No echo. Behind him, I sensed the vast presence. Beneath the roots, but it was. Distant. Resting. No longer pressing against the surface of the world. They learned. I asked. He nodded once. They are learning. The words sounded different now. Earned. And you? I asked carefully. Daniel glanced back at the forest, then at me. I am something between, he said. Not fully them. Not fully this. He gestured vaguely toward the house. That's better than before, I said. A faint smile appeared. Small, genuine. Yes. We stood in silence for a while longer. The sun dipped lower, shadows stretching across the yard. The boundary between forest and home remained clear. Respected. I won't cross without permission, Daniel said quietly. I studied him. There were no cracks in his skin. No threads pulling him backward. Just a boy-shaped figure standing in twilight. You don't need to, I replied. The ember in my chest pulsed once. And from deep beneath the forest, something answered, not with hunger, not with demand, but with acknowledgement.